No, I'm graduated in political science, also a financial education. I grew in a family where my father was a professor at the university, and very young I already had some interest for politics and for international relations. I first started my career as a tax auditor, corporate tax auditor at the Belgian Ministry of Finance, but I also took the diplomatic exam and was successful. So after I entered into the Belgian Foreign Ministry in '93, just before a Belgian presidency of the European Union. It is during our presidency that the Maastricht Treaty entered into force and modernized somehow the European Union. I made my traineeship in Rome, 6 months. 6 months holidays, if I may say so. Once you left the embassy, you were walking in this wonderful city where every stone tells you something. And then I came to Kyiv in '96 with my spouse, and we stayed there 3 years. I must say that Ukraine had a very different face at that moment, confronted with a lot of problems, discovering the rules of pluralism in politics, and of course complex economic reforms. But what amazed me was that in those difficult circumstances, tolerance was already the guiding principle. Ukraine opted at that time for coalition governments, so it means that instead of neighboring countries, no centralized constitution, but a constitution that obliged the politicians to speak with each other and to develop a political culture of dialogue. I think that's very important to stress. And then I was lucky because from the very beginning when I was there, I became member of the Trade Club of Ukraine, which was a club launched by the then Minister for Foreign Trade. And every month, if the weather conditions allowed that, we visited regions. So I visited almost all of the 27 Ukrainian regions, and amazingly, the first region I visited was Sumy. And Sumy, that's the place where my 2 kids were born. Well, first of all, there were not many applicants in the Belgian diplomatic service in the 19th to be posted in such a country. But from the very beginning, we discovered that country, and we discovered a joyful people and very hospitable, although the financial means to receive people were extremely limited. So we were very happy, and the capital, Kyiv, is a capital where you can walk for hours. You have very beautiful buildings. At that time, they were in very poor condition, but nevertheless, the aesthetic value of those buildings was already there. It took a while before relatives in Belgium and France dared to visit us in Ukraine. But they were, when they visited us, they were extremely enthusiastic about what we were able to show them, not only in Kyiv, but also in other cities in Ukraine, if they had enough time to travel with us. So we were extremely happy in that country. And when I left, I felt, I had this feeling of confidence for the future of Ukraine. Those people are clever, those people can work very hard, and they are tolerant. So they have in fact all qualities to have a European future. And at that time we had elections in '97, if I correctly remember, and we were surprised. The Ukrainian voters were not apathic. They mobilized themselves already in '97, and they voted for the candidate who promised Euro-Atlantic integrations. And all politicians who were elected later at a higher level of responsibilities took over their promise. They kept their promise. So they also created expectations in the Ukrainian people. But that's something, even today, we have to keep in mind. First thing I want to say is that Ukraine is maybe the last nation converted into a state, an independent state. If you look at this process of transformation of a nation, of a people into a nation with a language, a territory, and then converting to a state internationally recognized, Ukraine is among the latest. Even the Baltic states had a legal existence before they were annexed by the Soviet Union. That's the first point. When now that I hear in Russia, for instance, that the Ukrainian identity is put in question, it's a cynical position, actually. So we have a country, Ukraine, independent since '91. We also need to stress that this independence was voted by referendum with an overwhelming majority in the 27 region. More than 80% everywhere, also in the east, and 57 in Crimea, if I'm right. So Ukraine is independent. Why it is important that Ukraine remains independent? Because this is the promise of a peaceful Europe. Central and Western Europe have the guarantee that they will no longer a superpower threatening all European countries as long as Ukraine is independent. This is a strategic vision that was elaborated in the 80s and in the 90s, and which, to my mind, remains completely valid today. We have to explain to the European citizens how Ukraine evolved and how similar this country has become. When you have 30 years of experience of political pluralism, so it means that in the framework or in the background of a sovereign country, that a democratic practice and a democratic tradition has been established. I think that's very important with the Ukrainian rapprochement towards the European Union. Yes, Ukraine is compatible with the Copenhagen criteria. And that's the first point which seems to me interesting. The second element I would explain to the European citizens is the distance. I was posted in Kyiv in the 90s, but if there is something that doesn't change, it's the location of the countries and the distances. Brussels, Kyiv, it's 22 hours driving, a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on the control you have at the borders. And the western border of Ukraine, it's about 15 hours now. So it means that what is happening now, the tragedy that is happening now in Ukraine, is not far from us. And if we did not keep firm on our principles and on our solidarity, financial, military, with Ukraine, it's a pure illusion to believe that if Ukraine loses this war, that we will not have consequences on our own security and heavier consequences. This is something we also have to tell, to repeat and to repeat again. Ukrainian is a European country, its vocation is Europe, but the security of Ukraine is also our security. I left Ukraine in '99. I would have liked to stay a fourth year, but unfortunately the ministry, unfortunately the ministry had other plans for me. But we came back in 2001 to adopt our second child. Not many changes in 2 years' time. And then I visited again Kyiv with this second child in 2021. So 20 years later, we decided to go by car. Because this was a way to discover the progress made by the country. I'm speaking here about economy, but if you look at the figures, in 30 years' time, Ukraine lost 10 million inhabitants. A low birth rate, like in other countries in Europe, and also emigration. But nevertheless, when we came back in Ukraine, we discovered a country that had completely changed, with a very dynamic agriculture, infrastructures improved. Kyiv, a city where you had a lot of shops, restaurants, all things that were missing, but which help to have a social life, not only for the visitors, but also for the Ukrainians themselves. So a completely different country. If you look at the statistics, the economic growth of Ukraine was in the middle, I would say, in comparison with other countries, but with a much lower demography. So if you want to measure the dynamism of this country, you need to use statistics per capita. And then you realize how dynamic these people is. That's the feeling. That's my feeling for as an economist. But it's not only that. When you go back to Kyiv 20 years later, you also observe that the cultural life is different, more intense, maybe less academic than what we discovered in the 90s. So finally, the people I rediscovered in 2021 is a people that had been working for 30 years with remarkable results, and a people confident in itself. When we arrived in August 21, I, of course, communicated with enthusiasm my observations that the country has evolved, and the first answer was, Charles, we have been working here for 30 years, so it's normal that we have results. And the second reaction was, we have evolved and we are not afraid anymore. Or the structures inherited from the Soviet dictatorship had been mainly dismantled. And so this also explains the citizens, they dare to speak freely now, they don't fear any kind of pressure, etc. The country had become a liberal country. I came from Pakistan and now arrived in Luxembourg. And many people tell me, oh, this must be a big change for you. In fact, telling it's much better in Luxembourg. And then I say, no, we were very happy, and that's true in Pakistan, because it's an interesting country, and we like that. And then the next question is, yes, but what was the most interesting country in your long career? And I said, no one. They were all interesting because I made them interesting. It's only that. Every human community has a story to tell, and you have, as a diplomat, to listen to that. And to make use of that. We are invited. We are not here to lecture people, and so they have to. If my country decided to have an embassy there, it's my job to understand how things are working there, and then you are not there to lecture people, but rather to listen to them, to understand their logic. And to work for keeping the bilateral relation alive. And if you do that, normally it's interesting. But all people do not have the same level of difficulty. That's another story. And difficulty is sometimes where you do not expect it. It's difficult to define love as a word, but my definition of that is in fact quasi-genetic, but it's helping people to grow, to improve, to increase, and a very experienced ambassador I served told to trainee diplomats who were visiting us, the first thing you have to do as a diplomat is to love people. If you are unable to do that, you will not be happy in the country you are posted in, and you will not serve your government either. But my definition of that was, my understanding of that statement was that we must help people to improve, to increase, and to make tomorrow better than today. The simple rule, but you can do that modestly as a diplomat. I served in many difficult countries, sometimes in post-conflict situation. I also served in a country where we had fightings with heavy weapons after an election, so under tough conditions. First of all, people in general hate war. This is the worst scenario which can happen to any man or to any woman. And when you live in countries affected by war, when you see the damages, it's called psychological, material damage, this is really definitely something that we must avoid. And there, the diplomats have, of course, a responsibility to prevent war and to stop wars as well. So that's the first observation. And the second one is that in many countries, the governments have ambitions, but for different reasons, most of the time because of the lack of budget, those ambitions are not implemented. And then the people have to go on and organize themselves. That's why throughout the world you observe similarities in the way the civil societies are working. But there are also countries where governments don't like civil societies at all. But to my view, this has been a constant in the history of the humanity, of mankind, that people first organize themselves, and from there you have a religion which plays a role in the definition of what is good and what is not good, and also to impose certain behaviors of solidarity, of discipline, etc. And then you have the size of a family. In a modern society where social security works, the family tends to be nuclear, and sometimes divorced, married again, recomposed families, and some families as well, a mother living with her children, or a man, it's less frequent, with the children. So in developed societies, the mechanism of social security bring a form of very of small families, while in other countries where social security doesn't work, or not in a very satisfactory way, then of course solidarity happens on a wider base, simply because you need more people to mutualize risk. But that's also something you observe everywhere on the earth. So the difficulty when you come from a country which is wealthy is to transport schemes existing and working in your country, but are very far from the local realities. And so poor people have stories to tell you, and then you realize that in our societies, 5 generations earlier, we had exactly the same organization. So we cannot despise other people, because if we consider their organization as more archaic than our societies nowadays, we forget that we had to go to that same organization maybe 1 century ago. War is unacceptable, and there is no, in this war in Ukraine, even if you take in the Russian perspective, this war is completely ununderstandable, illogical, against the long-term interest of Russia. My only explanation is that Putin likes wars. There is no other explanation. It's not the long-term interest of Russia to keep a bad relation with its biggest bilateral neighbor. It is not the interest of Russia to scare the foreign investors, etc. You can go on. If you reflect, but that's rather the work of a diplomat, what shape could have the post-conflict architecture of security in Europe, you would probably find solutions that would be very similar to those which were existing before the war, and that Putin systematically and deliberately broke conventional disarmament, nuclear dismantling of nuclear weapons, etc., etc. So this makes this war completely absurd. But we need to stop with that. Of course, we have principle. We cannot accept that borders in Europe be changed by force. Territorial integrity must be respected. Sovereignty also. And as long as those principles are not respected, we have to keep firm on Russia. Yes, but when I'm calling my friends in Kyiv, and when I'm listening all their sufferings, in the same time, my only desire is that this war stops as quickly as possible. So we are scattered between human solidarity and diplomatic principles.